Episode number 119. Hello, you're listening to the Career Changemaker podcast. Having the courage to leave a career that you have worked hard to build and try something else can be tough. So in each episode, we dive into key career change strategies so that you have a clear understanding of what is required to transition into a new role or a new industry without feeling like you have to start at the bottom or have to take a massive pay cut, because ain't nobody got time for that. If you are ready for frank and honest discussions about how to become a career change maker, keep listening. I'm your host, lawyer turned career strategist and executive coach, Janine Esbrand. Are you eager to get unstuck and figure out what you would actually like to do with your career next? Have you been going around in circles trying to figure it out but getting no further forward? If so, you're going to love today's sponsor, my signature group program, the Career Clarity Academy. Changing career direction can feel overwhelming and daunting, but it doesn't have to be. In my signature program, we give you clear, step-by-step, proven processes for getting completely clear on what it is that you want to do and understanding how you can leverage your existing experience and position yourself to attract and land a dream role. To find out more, head over to lightboxcoaching.com/academy. Hello, and welcome to the show. I'm super excited about sharing today's interview. I'm speaking to an amazing woman who has a really impressive career history, and she's going to be breaking down the multiple career changes that she has made and why she made them. And I know that you're going to be inspired. If you've been considering a career change for some time, just listening to how she approached making a move and the bold and courageous decisions that she made is definitely going to inspire you to take action. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Yewande Faloyin. Hi, Yewande. I am so excited to interview you today. Thank you for being here. Let's start off by you introducing yourself and telling the audience a bit about you.
Awesome. Yeah. And first of all, I'm also super excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me, Janine. So my name is Yewande Faloyin. I am founder and CEO of Otita Leadership Coaching Consulting, where we coach and consult with individual high achievers and leaders, as well as businesses, to help them accelerate to their next level of success. I know we're going to talk about career, but prior to that, in a prior lifetime, I worked in corporate, making a number of career changes. So starting off as a software developer, then moving into prime brokerage and product management, and then moving on to being a consultant, and then starting my own business. So that's kind of like the short version.
I love it. And this is part of the reason why I wanted to speak to you, because our listeners tend to be people who are thinking about making a career change and sometimes feel a bit stuck around that and they're not sure whether to take the leap and whether to actually do it. The fact that you've made 3 career changes and you've been in such, different industries, and now you're running your own business, I just really want to dive in and learn more about your thought process, why you made the decisions that you did. So I'm super excited. So firstly, tell us a bit about kind of what your career looked like initially, and then what led you to your first career transition.
That's such a good question. And I'll before I start, I'll say that I think career changes are always really difficult. So now as I speak back in hindsight, I recognize that a lot of it will be like, oh yeah, I just did this. But no doubt it was tough at every stage. So I started off as a software developer working in a bank at Morgan Stanley in London. And what's interesting was I also did my degree in computing, and I was convinced that I was going to be like some major techie working in like Silicon Valley. And after that didn't quite work out. I started out in technology, but it was still software development. And after a few years, I was like, yeah, I like tech, but I don't love it, right? There were all these other people who were really, really into it. You could tell they were passionate. They were like coding all the time. And I was like, yeah, I like my job. It's interesting. I get to do the analytical stuff, but there's something missing. And I think that was really a surprise for me, because I was sure that I kind of found the path. And then suddenly it was just like, what? I don't know what I want to do. So I start looking around. At the same time, what's interesting was that I'd actually been almost like positioning myself for my next role, but I didn't actually realize that. So within the prime brokerage department, still at Morgan Stanley, I started doing some work for some clients and for a department there, just because it seemed interesting to me, but I hadn't thought of that as the path. And then I randomly had a chat with my manager when I was thinking of moving, and he was like, oh no, stay for a while. You can move into this other team. It'd be a perfect transition. In my head, I was like, well, if it's a perfect transition, why don't I just do it now? So I went and I spoke to the other team and I was like, hey, like, you know what? I love the stuff you guys do. I think I'm doing a great job. How about the transition? Like, oh, this is great. Like, we wanted to get you, but we can't poach people from other teams. And then I made the shift. But I would say it was primarily by, I guess, being driven more by passion. And then recognizing my strengths just by chance. But I guess I kind of positioned myself for that anyway.
Yeah, I love that because it's that there's two things in there. The first is often when we make a decision around a path that we're going to take, it's normally before we even know what it's going to be like. So when I decided I want to be a lawyer, it's like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. But it wasn't until I got into it that I knew what I was actually getting myself into. And then sometimes you can feel like you've worked so hard to get here and then you're there and it's like, oh, this isn't it. Like it doesn't feel how I thought it was going to feel. But I love how you then just took action to say, well, what am I interested in? And how can I get involved in other things? And that's something that people can do. It doesn't have to always be, okay, I need to make this huge leap. Look around for opportunities where you are and see like, oh, let me explore. Let me see if there's anything here that I could do, as opposed to feeling like you need to jump ship as soon as you no longer feel satisfied.
Exactly. Completely agree with that. And what I would add to that, which, I mean, I'll put my hand up. It took me a long time to recognize this. I would say even like 8 years into my career. But at every stage, as I look back, I was still taking an element of the previous journey because there was something that I loved about tech. So even within product management, although I was doing a lot of other stuff in terms of taking care of hedge fund clients, my knowledge and ability to understand tech helped because when it came to projects that had to do with building out systems or helping hedge fund COOs with their tech, I had that connection and I could work with the tech guys and girls to get that delivered. And there was trust there. And there were still elements that I liked, the analytical side, but it just shifted. So that took me a while because sometimes I would sort of want to let go of everything in the past to move on. But then when I realized that, like, actually there are elements I can take to continue to build my skill sets at every stage, it made things a lot stronger. But again, it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, and I love that because there's so much value that you could bring. So if you think about you versus another person who went into that team, you having that knowledge meant that you could bring a different perspective. Because sometimes people feel like if I'm moving into something different, I'm on the back foot because I don't have as much experience in this. But actually the experience you already have is so valuable in certain situations. So you can leverage that. And
exactly.
You did that again and again. Love it. So how long, if you think about like your timeline, so how long were you in your initial kind of tech software role and then like the next role?
Yeah. So the first role I was in, the software development one, for 3.5 years.
Okay.
My next role, which was then in product management, was for 5 years. And I always say that I stayed there longer because I had an awesome team. And if I didn't have as great a team, I probably would have left a little bit sooner, just in terms of like the trajectory and the role and me still being excited. But people make such a huge difference.
That is so good. So good. The environment can make or break it, right?
Definitely.
So what led you then to go from the role that you moved into within Morgan Stanley and then shift again?
Yeah. So I basically at every point where it's time to move, I'm like, I know I want to move because I feel like I'm not being stimulated in my role. I feel like I'm not learning as much. Like I know I can do the job, but I don't see the next path. And I often don't know what I want to do. So at Morgan Stanley, while I was doing this role, working with CEO hedge funds, I loved aspects of it, but then I was getting a little bit bored. And so I was a VP at Morgan Stanley then, and Morgan Stanley has this program where they get what they call high rising VPs or something. I can't remember what it's called. And they bring us together to do like an 8 week consulting gig for a pro bono client. So like a charity. And I'm like, oh, I'm bored. Might as well do it. Might as well apply. I applied, I got in. And like 8 weeks, I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like it was like consulting, didn't know what I was doing, kind of just took my skill sets. They gave us some training and I loved it. Like I was energized by it. my team, even I remember my boss's boss at the time going, wow, you seem really, really like excited to do this. I was like, yeah, I kind of do. So it was like, I know, I don't know what I want to do. I'll go be a consultant. This seems fun because that's easy. This seems fun and I can do it. And so then I go on my job hunt again. And I considered doing an MBA at that time. I know a lot of people who transition into consulting, especially if it's like McKinsey, Bain, or BCG, do an MBA. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm not 100% that this is what I really want to do. I know I love problem solving. I believe I'm good at it. I'm excited to do it. But yeah, I don't know if I want to do an MBA. So I started the job hunt again. What was really helpful this time was instead of trying to do it myself, I started tapping into my network and finding specifically people who had done the same transition as me and people who could advise me on that. And not like through MBA, but literally from like finance to consulting. Spoke to a few people. I invested in a program to get like upskilled in moving through. I mean, I am giving you the short version. The months of doing this, and it must have been about 8 months before I transitioned. It was the most grueling, difficult preparation and like interviewing that I'd ever done and have ever done since then. So, but it worked out. I moved into McKinsey as a consultant, which was another journey in itself.
Yeah, but that preparation piece, I'm glad you mentioned that because it is a journey and it is a process. And sometimes I think people can get discouraged at the first hurdle, like, oh no, I've sent out an email to somebody and they haven't gotten back to me. Or, right. I made an application and it was rejected. And it's like, you have to recognize that if this is something that you want to do, it's not going to be easy. It can be totally worth it, but it's not necessarily going to be easy. So setting yourself up to recognize that this isn't like a overnight thing. This is a process. Yeah. It can take months, it could take years. And so you need to know that you're committed to the process. But if you want to have work that you enjoy, then it's worth doing because how much longer do you have of your career, right? Instead of like just staying where you are because it's hard to move, just committing to that process and getting help. I love that you said you got support with that.
Yeah, definitely. 2 things that you just brought up actually that I want to emphasize. One, the support. That was the first time that I had personally like invested. But I would even say money is obviously one thing, but like time and energy, but also money into developing myself for that shift. And looking back, again, it was a big decision because I was like, oh my gosh, if I pay for this and I spend all this time and it doesn't work out, then what? And I was like, well, I want it. So I like, what's the other option? Not invest and then not get it. So that was one thing. The second, rejection. So I applied, now that I look back, I don't know how smart this was, but I only applied to 3 firms. So I applied to McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. I really wanted Bain. I didn't really want McKinsey because I had preconceived ideas of who they were. Again, lesson learned, don't do that. And BCG was okay. Bain, I didn't even get through to interview. BCG, I got past first round interview, but I completely screwed up on one of the interviewers. I didn't get past first round to the final round. But the horrible thing was I got rejected from Bain and BCG on the same day within 1 hour of each other.
Oh, no.
As I say it, like my heart's still palpitating.
That's like a left right jab, like in boxing, like boop boop.
You know what? Like the pit of my stomach, I still feel it right now. It was horrible. I went down the cycle of doom. It was like, or spiral of doom is what I call it. Like. And it was on a Monday. Yes, it was on a Monday because the interview was on a Friday and then I got so bad. It was on a Monday. The Bain one came through in the morning. BCG came through right before lunch. I was at work. And so like in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to move. I'm like, my job's going to find out. They're going to fire me. They're going to realize that I suck. Like everything that you can think of went through my head. I had a week of just like, it was the worst week of my life. One of the worst weeks of my life. You can tell I'm still reliving it. So we're going to move past that right now.
Okay, let's talk about how you picked yourself up.
Okay.
Pick yourself up from that so that you could go ahead and apply again. Because I think this is what people need to hear. Like you can feel the emotions. It's okay, but we can't just stay there. Like, what do we do next?
Yeah, definitely. I did 2 things. One, I spoke to a friend of mine, a really good friend, and I was like, I know I'm going to say some stuff that's not true, which is like the whole I suck, I'm going to get fired, all of that, but I need you to just listen so I can go through that spiral. And in 2 days, I'm going to come out of it. Like I set myself that goal, like honestly, because I just wanted to like feel horrible. And then I knew I could pick myself up, right? And recognize that that's something I needed to go through. And then I went back to my process, right? The company that I was investing in to help me get upskilled and into consulting. We went back, we discussed the interviews, we discussed what went wrong. And then we started prepping for McKinsey. And what helped me with McKinsey as well, besides the prep, because then I was like, all right, I know how this works. I know what I could have done better. And so I created a plan to then overcome that. And what really helped me with McKinsey was because I didn't think I wanted to get in, because I assumed that everyone was not really nice, which is not true. It was like it's the coolest firm ever. But I went in kind of going, whatever, if I get it, it's cool. Like, I'm amazing. I've done the prep. I've done the work. They're going to love me. It'll be up to me whether I want to join. And that mindset really helped because it just eased the pressure as well.
That is like a totally different energy, right? To go into it, as opposed to like, oh, I really want this, and then psych yourself out and stress and then not perform as well, versus, okay, let me just be confident in who I am and what I can offer, and just know that if it's the right fit, it's the right fit.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, I still wanted it, right? Because if you're going for an interview and you're preparing like that, you still want the yes. But I think I just took some of the pressure off, because one, what was the worst thing that could happen? One rejection? I'd already got two on one day. And this was a chance for me to go, all right, I've put the work in. I know that I've done everything that I can do. They've called me for an interview. So I have to have some confidence in that, right? Because they wouldn't if it was a waste of their time.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. Okay. So then talk us through, you go to McKinsey, you're working there as an amazing consultant. How are you now running your own business? Like, how did that happen?
Janine, I don't know. So I'll give you the short version of McKinsey. McKinsey by far, so I was there for 3 years, and it was by far the best time of my corporate career in terms of like people I worked with, projects I did, work I did, me developing. I mean, it was just exceptional. I can't even begin to talk about it. Best time of my corporate career that I would never do again because I was burnt out. I burnt out twice, which is not, I mean, it's obviously not good from a health perspective, but in terms of impact and the work that I was doing, I also knew that it wasn't good for performance as well. And it's weird because as I talk about it, as you can see, like I'm really excited about the firm. Even now when people want to join, I speak to them and I'm like, oh, I do this, it's great. But then caveating that it's a lot of work and just lifestyle wise, it's not, at least for me, I couldn't make it work. It wasn't great. And so when I realized that, I was like, all right, something has to change. Either I need to change the way that I'm working in the firm or I need to leave. And the reason I decided to leave was maybe about 6 months, 9 months before I started thinking about my trajectory again and about what that could look like. And I couldn't see a path that I was excited about. I was excited about every moment and knowing that I would learn, but outside of the learning and the opportunities and getting the chance to work across East Africa, being British Nigerian, I worked in Nigeria, there were just opportunities everywhere, but I couldn't see an opportunity that I was personally really excited about and that I felt really leveraged like my innate, unique skill set, right?
Yeah.
And then I think also because of the burnout, I was like, I don't know what I want to do, which is strange for me because I always know what I want to do. When I left, I'll tell you how serious it is. When I left Morgan Stanley, I knew 6 months before that I was leaving. So I started looking for someone who would take over my role. I secretly interviewed them. I secretly found out from my boss that they would like them. And I got them to do projects with us to figure out that they would get, yeah, I'm like that.
Wow. That's
and so when I quit,
like not even like, yeah, I'm leaving. I'll give you notice so you can find my replacement. No. I've already found someone.
Yeah. So the day I quit, I was like, and I know the perfect person for my role. And you already like her. And I know she wants the job. And she's been working with us. And she did end up joining the team. I mean, amazing. So I like structure. I like planning. I was so tired. I didn't know. And I had to be okay with that. So I quit having no idea what I wanted to do. I assumed that I would go back into conventional, like employment. So someone like me being employed by a company. But when I quit, my only thing was, number one, get rest. Number two, do something that I love to do. And I ended up going to get certified as a yoga instructor in Vancouver, which was super awesome and just different and fun.
Wow.
And then number three, which was my only criteria, was to do and engage in anything that I was connected to. So if I met someone and I thought, ooh, what they're doing is interesting, I didn't even really care whether or not it was something I wanted to do, but I would engage in that. And if there was something new that came up, I'd be like, oh, I tried that. And then I'd reflect on all the stuff that I love to do at McKinsey, at Morgan Stanley, just in my personal life. And it was just like a period of exploration. And I had a friend, and at the time, not a really close friend, who we went for dinner once. And she said, because she was going through a coach training program. And she said, you know what? You'd be an awesome coach. Like, you listen, you're very analytical, but then you kind of let people, do their thing. And I was just like, I don't even know what this coaching thing is. That's not a real job. Like, I don't have time for that. At some point I need to make money and I need to go back into employment. But then I remembered my plan, which was to engage in anything that seemed interesting or that people put in front of me. And before I knew it, I was piloting coaching clients. I knew that I still loved solving problems, which is the consulting side. And then I realized that I loved empowering people to solve their own problems. And I realized I've been doing that throughout my career. And then I was like, coach, consultants. And then, I don't know, I woke up one day and incorporated my business.
Amazing. So weird. I just love it. Like the journey of exploration and being open to that. Like being open to, okay, I'm just going to explore different things. And then saying, okay, like I'm going to bring together all of the different aspects that I love and that I'm good at, and then do something with that and then create something awesome. So good. So good. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, because I know that you are Nigerian, like your background, and I know that typically in terms of family and expectations around what you do, Nigerians, like people from, certain ethnic backgrounds, there's a view on like what you should be doing or not. And so I know that for a lot of people, when they're thinking about making a career change, that element comes in, like, what are people going to think? What are family going to think? So I'm interested to know, like, having made all of these transitions, and you went through some really high positions in amazing companies, what did your family think? And how did they respond to this? Like, okay, I'm just going to leave. Were they like, what are you doing? Or were they like, yeah, just do it? I'm just really interested to know.
That's such a good question. It was a bit different. I'll talk about my, so my parents are generally quite liberal anyway. Like they're pretty easygoing. They never were like, oh, a doctor, lawyer, what's the other thing? I can't remember. Anyway, doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like they didn't have that approach. It was more about like us finding what it was we wanted to do. Having said that, of course, like with any parent, there's always, whether they admit it or not, there are always expectations and stuff. So I'll split them up. My mom had wanted me to quit McKinsey for a long time because she saw the toll it was taking on me, just like in terms of my energy, and she knew I was burnt out and all of that. But when I quit, she was like, are you okay? Like, I think she was really concerned about like whether I was having like a crisis.
Are you having a breakdown?
I'm having a breakdown. So I think there was never a point where either her or my dad said, no, don't quit. Think about what you're doing. Think about your career. I think, honestly, it was more from a place of like care and concern. So they did ask a lot of questions, especially when I was kind of just like, I'm not doing anything. But there was never that pressure. And I always joke that my dad's like my personal consultant. He's still trying to get paid for that. And so a lot of the time we're just kind of discussing, what am I thinking? What's my approach? He actually wasn't surprised when I quit because he kind of saw the signs coming, and then it was like trying to help me figure it out. So they were great from that perspective, but then always obviously asking and being a little bit concerned about, all right, what does that mean next? I was really fortunate, but I do know that a lot of people do have that pressure. What's interesting for me was when I switched and I started coaching, in my head, I started to actually think about what other people, especially who knew me in the corporate world, would now think. So although no one had come to me and said, what, you're a coach? Can you be a coach? Da, 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 da. in my head, those conversations started to happen.
Yes.
And so putting myself out there, and I think this is regardless of whether you're moving into a new industry or a new role, or into from corporate to self-employment, we can in our head start to wonder what people will think about that transition. It's almost like the imposter syndrome thing and whether we're ready enough. And one of my big learnings was, if you say you're ready, then you're ready, right? Put it out there and people will either, they'll adapt to it at some point because that's what you're putting out there. So that was more of a conversation in my head than externally, but I was really fortunate with my family.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you mentioned that, because that identity, I refer to it as like an identity shift when you're moving from one role to another, and that's how everybody sees you, particularly colleagues. It is hard. Like I had exactly the same thing when I got certified as a coach while I was still working as a corporate lawyer, but I didn't tell anyone in my firm that I was doing this thing on the side. And then I would speak to my colleagues about it. It's like, what did you do on the weekend? It's like, oh yeah, I had a good weekend. I was totally at like a coaching conference, like a coaching training for the whole weekend, but I wouldn't talk about it because I was like, they're going to think, what is this coaching thing? Particularly like then back in 2014, coaching was like in the UK, not as, as prominent as it is now. It was more like an American thing. And I thought they're going to think I've gone crazy. And so I had those same conversations in my head. And it's really funny because I've now coached some of my previous colleagues who have come to me like, Janine, can you help me? And I'm like, yeah. But back then I would never have told them that I was a coach. Whereas now I'm like, I just talk about it all the time. So it's really interesting that you had that same kind of thought process. So good.
Definitely. The things we learn, right?
Yeah, it's all a journey. So if there's anyone listening now who's like, okay, I feel inspired to make a move, given that I've heard about all of Yewande's various transitions, which have turned out amazing, what would you say to them if they're feeling stuck and like, what should I do, or should I do it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's going to sound a little bit cliche, but cliche, is that a word? We'll go with it.
It can be.
It's a word. I think the first thing is really to recognize what's truly going on and like what your gut and your heart's saying about something, because it can be so easy to immediately go, oh, I think I want to change. And then to automatically take it out of our minds, right? To start to analyze and go, oh, but it's not possible. I have a family. I have a great job already. I want to still make the same amount of money. But then if I switch industries, I'm going to go at a lower position. Like, it's so easy to psych ourselves out without even going through the process. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would say is just slow down, take some space, and truly listen, not just to your head. It's like the three factors, like to your heart and your gut, because you know within you what you're capable of and what it is you want to do. And then it's taking the action. And I always say, again, one of the biggest shifts in the way that I work now is always thinking about where, like, if something's important to me, how am I matching that in terms of investment? And yes, that always, I think for me, I always look as well as monitor or resource investment, which sometimes involves money, sometimes doesn't, but also time and energy. And if we say something's important, then work has to go into it, right? There are few things that we do in life that just falls on our plate. Even when we think someone's been lucky, if you look beneath it, there's been some work. They've put themselves in a certain position. They put themselves out there. They've often had a team of people around them who have helped them. None of us do anything by ourselves, right? This is a short conversation. If I went through all of that, and I'm sure this is the same for your career, if I went through all the ups and downs, like it can seem easy, but it's not, right? So I would say get some support and invest time and energy and resources if it's that important, because just like other people have gone through the same transition, and there are many people who've been through, like, I'm not the first person who's had this type of transition. You're not the first person who's had your transition. There are so many others. Learn from others, support yourself with the people around you who will help you to make that shift.
Such good advice. Golden nuggets right there. So good. Okay, so I love to ask my guests if they have a quote or a mantra or something that they would like to share. Do you have one? I
do. This is a personal favorite for me, and I'll explain why. So, and Janine, you'll know this because I guess we went to the same coach training program. But one of my favorite quotes is, every moment describes who you are and gives you the opportunity to decide if that's who you want to be. Hopefully I didn't mess that up. But the idea behind that, and what I love about it, is we often, when we're stressed, I find that we're either often looking at the past and sort of beating ourselves up about something that's happened, right? And for me, it could have been, I messed up, so I got rejected twice, and we sit there, right? And then when we're we're in the future where we're scared about what's to come, and we're not present right now in order to take the action. And so what I love about that quote is it just helps to center me, and it goes, all right, this moment right now is describing who I am, right? Whether it's a coach, a consultant, someone who wants to move into another industry, a leader, a mother, like it doesn't matter what it is. And then going, and in this moment, I can choose to do something to be who I want to be, right? So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I want to move into this industry, or I want to move into this new firm, and I want a career change, literally you're in control of this moment to do something, and then to do something else, and then to do something else that moves you forward in that journey, right? And I just love it, because then it's easy, it's manageable, it's one step at a time.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Is like that's such a good quote. And I think I was talking to some of my coaching clients the other day, and I was saying to them, you know, the decisions that you make now are going to determine the results that you have in the future. And that's just the same thing. It's like you can just take one step today, and your future self will thank you for that, as opposed to just saying, I'm not going to do anything. So yeah, that is, I love it. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So good.
My favorite quote.
Thanks for sharing. So if people want to learn more about you, connect with you, where should they go?
Okay. So I'll keep it easy, because I know that you're also going to put some links direct. Yeah. So some context as well. When I was in school, because I partly grew up in the US and then in the UK and a bit in Nigeria and random places, but definitely in the US and the UK, I'd always be like, oh, my name's so long, it's so difficult. But now it's great because it's so SEOable. So go on LinkedIn.
Oh, I love it.
It is. Go on LinkedIn, or just type in Google Yewande Faloyin, and you'll find me, because there isn't really another. But also easiest, you can go to my website. LinkedIn's often the best place to connect me, but then I'm also on Instagram and on Facebook. And there's a Facebook group there where I bring leaders together. And then you can also go to my website, which is otitoconsulting.com. So that's OTITO consulting.com.
Awesome. So yes, I will put all of the links to those in the show notes, so you guys can go and check her out. Yewande and I met, I should have said this at the beginning, but we met when we both spoke on a panel earlier on this year. And then literally I was like, this person has to be my friend. So that's how she's now on the podcast. And I'm just so excited that you're here with us. It's been awesome chatting to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Janine. And the feeling was absolutely mutual. And I remember going off the call being like really, really energized. And I love the stuff that you're doing, because career change is something that so many people struggle through. And so to know that there's a coach like yourself who's bringing people together and making that struggle easier and so much more achievable, I think is awesome. Because when people go into the careers that they love, life's just, it's like brighter. It's like walking on sunshine, right?
Yes.
We spend so much time in our careers and at work. So thank you so much for inviting me onto the show.
Isn't Yewande just awesome? So many golden nuggets. One of the things that really stood out to me was the fact that she has had multiple career changes, and whenever she made a decision to move from where she was into something else, she explored, she was open, and she made that transition, but she didn't necessarily feel like that had to be the final stop for her. And I know for many who are considering a career change, you can feel the pressure. You can feel the pressure to make the right decision. And I hope this conversation has just shown you that the decision that you make now doesn't have to be a forever decision. So just make some moves. As you make moves, doors open, paths open, you get more clarity, and then you can keep moving towards finding your ideal or your dream role. I hope you are feeling inspired that you too can become a career change maker, and I look forward to speaking to you in our next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Career Changemaker podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to let me know what your biggest takeaway has been. So head over to Instagram, tag me at Career Changemaker, and let me know your thoughts. What did you like most about today's episode? I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, keep working towards your career goals, and we will speak very, very soon.